The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
Another episode of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, talking with names that have wrestling backgrounds. That's sometimes the theme of these episodes. Today, we're going to talk to Drew Manning, a personal trainer, a guy who made some waves 7 years ago when he decided to purposely gain 75 pounds, then lose it to help him be a better personal trainer, among other things, and a former wrestler out of Northern Virginia, Centerville High School. Drew, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it, man.
All right, I got to throw this story out right off the bat. I thought I was going to save it, but once we did the intro, my fondest, it's not a fondest, I guess it is the most memorable Drew Manning moment I have, is at the 1999 Group AAA State Wrestling Tournament. You're in the consolation semifinals, and you lat drop David Walker from Great Bridge, get the fall, and of course that time Great Bridge is in its heyday. They are like the Yankees of Virginia high school wrestling. Everybody hates him. Walker is a kind of a fiery guy anyway, and the place at Oscar Smith High School goes nuts. It explodes. Walker throws double birds. One of the coaches is, I mean, it's just, and you were the guy that set that in motion. What do you remember about that particular instance back almost 20 years ago?
Wow, I have not talked about this experience in so long, but I still remember it vividly because it was a massive thing for me at that moment in time because he was expected to win. He was actually, beating me pretty good after the first period, and I was like, man, I got to do something, kind of drastic here. And I was known for my lat drops at that time, and yeah, I was fortunate enough to get it. I pinned him. The place went crazy because Great Bridge, unfortunately, like everyone was so good, but it's one of those teams where everyone wanted them to lose because they were so good, right? And so, I go over to shake his hand like you're supposed to do, and he refused to shake my hand and walked off, and everyone started booing. That's when he flipped off the crowd. His coaches tried to go over to him and make him go shake my hand. He pushed them away and kind of just walked off, and everyone was going crazy. Everybody was watching this, and so I was like, okay, whatever. He's upset. I get it. Like I get upset too, but I never done something like that. So yeah, we haven't crossed paths. It's probably a good idea. I don't know if he still hates me or whatnot, but that's crazy. Remember that, man. That's a very interesting story.
Yeah, because at the time, Mat Talk Online, which is the brand I have now, was one of the two major websites covering wrestling in Virginia. Bill Swink had the Virginia Wrestling Roundup when he was coaching at North Stafford and Colonial Forge. So yeah, I was sitting right there. Watched that thing, and with what happened with David, he actually went to wrestle at VMI. So he wrestled Division I. I actually saw him probably 6-7 years ago at a VMI Old Dominion football game, and he had a pretty decent college career after that. So he pretty much got over it. I'm not sure about what happened after that because I was obviously covering the event, but that is, I remember Centerville for two things. One is that, and two, Jeremy Ferry was one of the baddest dudes ever to walk the Virginia high school mats, a 3-time state champion from Centerville, and just getting into what got you into wrestling back then.
Yeah, it came from, I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, and I kind of looked up to my older brothers, and when I saw my older brothers playing football and wrestling, I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be that. I would see them working out, see their friends, and like how muscular they were, and I'm like, man, I want to be like that. So I started from a young age. And that's where I got into it. And, I wanted to be athletic. I wanted to be good at something. And football and wrestling were the two things that I were good at in life. And so that really helped me from a mental perspective to kind of say, hey, I'm good at these sports that are really hard. Now, I wasn't good in the beginning. When my first year of wrestling, I sucked. I remember my first match, I got pinned, I think, in under a minute, So I started from the bottom, but I got good over time. And then as a freshman, I developed my skills, and it was so funny. I started out at 119 as a freshman, and then wrestled 189 my senior year. But I loved it, man. Even though practices were so hard, like wrestling was one of the hardest sports, one of the hardest things physically and mentally I've ever put my body and mind through. But I'm so grateful that I learned about that discipline. So I learned a lot of good lessons from having that wrestling background.
Of note, you finished third that year, and the guy you beat in the finals, the third place match, Mark Kimmener from Oakton, was actually in the finals, I believe, a year before that. So, I mean, you had a pretty good pretty good high school career. I mean, Justin Johnson won the weight. Jason Cox ended up also wrestling at VMI collegiately. Scott Mania finished below you. He wrestled at UVA. So you were around a bunch of guys in that weight class that wrestled Division I.
Yeah, it was good competition that year. And that my senior year, it was interesting because the guy I lost to, I can't remember his name. He was from Salem, I believe, but he got fifth. I ended up getting third, but he was the one that I lost to. And so, I think if I, would have switched up my routine a little bit back then, I was kind of like one-sided. But at the same time, like I have no regrets, man. My junior year, I think I made it to states, and then senior year is where I placed third. But yeah, definitely really proud of having wrestling as a background and the things that I learned. And good memories too, man. That, especially that story right there, that'll always live with me. So
yeah, as I was talking to Tara, who helped set up this interview, she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm from Virginia too." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm from Pocosin. We used to go up in Battle Centerville at the Northern Region, the Nova Classic back in the day when we were the only AA school in the field. We're taking home the title. Be like, yeah, eat that AAA schools."
Exactly.
But now there's 7 classes, 6 publics, 1 private. It's a mess back in Virginia. But one thing that I always wondered is years later, actually a couple years later, and actually really probably the next year after that, you end up wrestling at Southern Virginia University, which at the time was a club program. They're now an NCAA Division III school. Why the choice to go to Southern Virginia?
Yeah, so a quick little story about it. So I originally got a scholarship to play football, and that was going to be my focus in college. And I played at Shepherd College, which was a Division II school.
West Virginia. Yeah, I know it. Louverture Jones played there, and Lamont Buford, I think, also is in the backfield. A couple tab guys back in the day.
Yeah, they had a good football program. So I chose football over wrestling because I got the scholarship. I went there, I was miserable. I didn't like my coaches. I didn't like it there, and I stayed there for 1 semester. And it's kind of a crazy story, but my brother was going to Southern Virginia at the time, and he kind of told me about they had a wrestling program, and that was one of the things to kind of convince me to come there. And I'm like, oh, I'll come check it out for a weekend. And for whatever reason, man, at that age, like I needed to get out of the environment I was in at Shepherd, and kind of in it's a religious school, so it was like, it was like night and day. I kind of like lost my way, if you will, during my Shepherd college days. And this was kind of a way to kind of get myself more grounded, with the religion that I was a part of back then. And so I was like, well, they don't have a football program, but they do have a wrestling program. And I was pretty good at that. So we were like part of the NCWA, I think is what it was called. And so I went there for a semester, kind of changed my ways, ended up serving a mission for that church, went to Brazil for 2 years. And then kind of went, it was the crazy, journey after that. I went to Utah to play football again. And then I heard SVU had a football team. So I went back to SVU to play football and finish off my career and graduate, in 2006 from there.
Yeah, and just to put the some of the, I guess, the hints here together, it's pretty much a LDS school, a Mormon school, and with a large family, you can kind of put 2 and 2 together there. So, and the mission, but when you look at it now, is it kind of cool to look at Southern Virginia now? It's like, wow, that's okay. Now they're an NCAA team. They're eligible for championships. They elevated it to varsity status 2-3 years ago. Coach Logan Davis wrestled there. He's kind of doing different ways of coaching in different sports there. But what's it like to kind of see, hey, oh, well, they are NCAA sport now?
Yeah, I think it's really cool that they finally got that. That's one thing they've been working for so long. And so I remember back when I went there after my Shepherd College days, I think there was 500, 600 students, I think at the most. And to see where they've come is really cool. So definitely really proud of them, and they've done a good job. And they still want to keep it a small school. And that's the thing is, they're pretty close to VMI and what's the other school?
Washington and Lee.
Washington and Lee, yeah. So we had some good competition with them with football sometimes and scrimmages. And actually, okay, I forgot to mention this. I did see David Walker wrestle at VMI one time in their gym, which is probably the most intimidating place to wrestle I've ever seen.
Oh, the old place. They've got a new place now. The old place was called the Thunderdome, man. Cock Hall. That place was nuts. It was one of the best college wrestling venues that nobody really knew about, man. I mean, that back in the Rocky Trudgeon era, man, the Corps cadets would come out. It was crazy. But as we shift, and real side note, I've actually been to Shepherdstown, West Virginia, and I know you mentioned this. My roommate in college was from Falls Church, one of my 27 roommates, and his girlfriend at the time went to Shepherd. We went up to Shepherd for a night, then went down to West Virginia for a football game when Amos Zaraway was playing for Miami, and then we went. Let's just say that was a fun weekend. But we I can understand where the ways of falling off the wagon, so to speak, can happen up in Shepherdstown. But getting to what you're doing now, you're a personal trainer. One, how long have you been a personal trainer, and when was this you realized this was kind of your calling?
Yeah, so back in 2009 is when I got certified. But right out of college, I got my first job with a big company, good position, where I was working for Daimler Chrysler as a financial analyst, good salary. I would move to Illinois. It was like a whole new life. And then the economy, we know what happened in 2008, 2009. The U.S. auto industry took a hit. So I moved to Utah, which is where my ex-wife's family was living at the time. And I kind of had to reinvent myself because I couldn't find a job to save my life, even though I had this good resume and I worked for this large company. So I was thinking about what my passions were. And ever since I was a kid, I've always been into health and fitness and lifting weights and, working on that physique. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to get certified. And so I got certified as a personal trainer, was doing that part-time. Ended up taking a full-time job in the medical field, which was a complete 180 for me, but I kind of had to go with the flow during those years of 2008, 2009. And I was doing part-time personal training on the side. And then that's where the idea of Fit2Fat2Fit came about.
And one thing I always had a question when it comes to personal training, because there's just like personal training advice, there's a lot of bad advice that floats around there. There are people that are not qualified to give this stuff, and they call themselves personal trainers. What is it? What do you do to make sure that, yes, I'm a legitimate personal trainer? How did you basically kind of rise above that, I guess, that fog of, tons of people to put yourself, say, yeah, I'm legit here?
Yeah. So, I did get my certification through NASM, which was like the gold standard at the time of personal training certifications. And I was going to work for a big box gym, but I decided not to. I decided to kind of, pave my own way. And I started training clients on my own. And, for me, it was so interesting being a personal trainer because I was so passionate about trying to help people. And I wanted to be the best at what I was doing. I wanted to, have all the secrets and have all the knowledge. But no matter how much I learned, about the knowledge of changing people's bodies, I couldn't connect with them. And, there was an issue where I would get frustrated with them on why they wouldn't just follow the meal plans and the workouts that I was giving them. I'm like, look, here you go. Here's what you do. You do it. There's no excuses. Stop giving in to like junk food. And, I know you're sore and tired, but you still got to go to the gym. You still got to do it. And they would tell me, Drew, you don't understand how hard it is for me to change my lifestyle. You've always been in shape. So for you, it's always been easy. That kind of wrestler's mentality of like, hey, you just do it, right? You don't talk back to the coach or you don't complain about the workouts. You just do it. And I was kind of carry that over into becoming a personal trainer. And then that's where I started thinking of like, man, maybe there's something I'm missing here. Maybe there's something that I need to learn as a trainer. Because a lot of trainers, we have this ego, like, hey, I have the knowledge, I know how to fix you. But that's kind of our ego getting in the way of like, maybe I need to listen to you and find a different approach.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I have always struggled with. I've been a big guy my entire life. At one time, I was 325 pounds. I think it was year 4 or 5 of college. I'm sitting around 245 right now. So I'm, making better life choices about what I'm eating. But here's the thing. We have this used to could thing. I've mentioned this. Rob Dion from Open Sky Fitness has been on the show talking about, people that were former athletes. Even no matter how bad of an athlete they were, they still have this belief that, oh, I used to be able to do this. They can go back and do it now as I'm 39 years old. I can't train like I was when I was 17, 18 years old and have, the fat just fall off after a couple wrestling workouts or a couple long runs. When you make that decision to say, all right, I'm going to know what this, let's use the terms people use. This fat guy wants to know, how, he can't do this. You don't know what it's like being a fat guy. Yeah. What was the, how do you convince yourself to say, I'm going to pack on 75 pounds and be fat?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in the right mind does that.
It's a great question. And this is where I feel like, if you believe in divine intervention, it was kind of like one of those moments where I felt called to do this. As soon as this idea popped up in my head, I don't really know where it came from other than it just kind of popped up. It was one of those moments where I kind of thought it out in my head, and this like light bulb turned on, and I was like, you're going to do this. And it was one of those rare moments that not all of us have in our lives, or we have very few of those moments. That's kind of how I have to best describe it. So it wasn't like really convincing myself. It was like, I think I'm going to do this. And so I started calling friends and family and saying, hey, I have this crazy idea. I think I'm going to do it. What do you think? And if everyone had told me, Drew, don't do it, Drew, don't do it, Drew, don't do it, I don't know if I would have done it. But everybody was like, 99% of people were like, Drew, you should totally do it. That would be awesome. And so that helped to build up my confidence to really pull the trigger on this. So it took me 2 to 3 months of planning, learning how to, create a YouTube channel, build a website, create a Facebook page. And, I talked to my wife at the time. I'm like, hey, can you just help me film this? And she was on board because she hated that I was such a health nut. She was like, good. So you're saying we're going to have donuts in the house and and cereal? She's like, finally. And she was pregnant at the time. So I think that's what also got her excited because, she was in that mentality of I can eat whatever I want to. I'm pregnant. So it was going to be fun.
That is true, by the way. I've got 2 kids. That is exactly true. That's in the rule book. That's in the when you're pregnant, your wife is pregnant, she can eat anything she wants.
Exactly. You can't say one thing to her, right? So anyways, it was really, really, really an interesting experience to get it started. Like, okay, I'm really going to do this. And I had no marketing strategy or media connections. Like, hey, one day I'm going to be on Dr. Oz, and one day I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to have a TV show. Like, I had no idea any of that stuff would happen when I first initially launched this.
You didn't do this to become a social media influencer. I mean, it's ultimately what it's part of what you've become, because when you say something now that you've got a following, you can't help but influence others with that. But yeah, so you didn't set out to be a viral sensation doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the first thing that popped into my head was Super Size Me with what Morgan Spurlock did. And I'm sitting there going, he only did that for 30. It took you 6 months. Or, okay, because I'm going to take some notes here on what to eat and what not to eat. What did you start? What was your diet like before? And then what did you start introducing? I mean, how quickly did you start notice the weight coming on?
Yeah. So back before, my diet was pretty boring and bland, but it was, healthy, lean meats, chicken breast, a lot of chicken breast, a lot of turkey meat, turkey bacon, occasionally some beef.
I think turkey bacon's a crime against humanity, but continue.
Same. I agree now with where I'm at today. But anyways, vegetables, a ton of vegetables, 6 to 7 small meals per day. So really high protein, moderate carbohydrate. I wouldn't say low carbohydrate, but moderate carbohydrate. And then kind of like a low fat approach. That's what I was doing. And it worked for me at the time, eating 6 to 7 small meals a day. And then boom, I start this journey. My first meal is a dozen donuts, and I failed miserably on YouTube. You can go watch that. My first video announcing my journey, and I struggled to get through 7. I almost threw up on camera.
All right, wait, let's stop. What type of donuts were they?
These were Krispy Kreme.
Oh my goodness, you did! Oh wow, that shows you how crazy you were into the health food. Because I mean, I think every human being on this planet should be able to kill a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts because they're that good.
They're that good. They work, but after 7,
so bad for you.
So bad. But anyways, that's not what I ate, because I did see Morgan Spurlock Supersize Me, and he focused on obviously fast food. And for some reason, we all still eat it, even though we know it's unhealthy for us. But what I wanted to do was focus on everyday American foods that we grew up on in the 70s and 80s that we don't think is that unhealthy for us. So a lot of things that surprise people. So, for breakfast, I would have a big bowl of cereal, usually Cinnamon Toast Crunch, with a big tall glass of juice and a side of toast, right? Because that's were the commercials that we saw.
Part of a balanced breakfast.
Exactly, 100%. And then for a snack in between breakfast and dinner, I would have like a chocolate covered granola bar and a soda. And my drink of choice was Mountain Dew usually. And then for lunch, I would have a couple peanut butter sandwiches on white bread, because when you grow up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, food's scarce. And so the cheapest way to feed 11 human beings is white bread and peanut butter and honey or jelly or whatever it was. And so I'd have a few of those for lunch. And then between lunch and dinner was another snack. And that was usually like a bag of chips like Doritos or Pringles or something. And then another soda. And then for dinner was, your typical white pasta, marinara sauce, and meatballs with a side of garlic bread. And then at nighttime, a couple hours later, you put kids to bed, you're watching TV, you're relaxing. You're like, I need something sweet to chew on. So either like some cookies or a little bit of ice cream or like another bowl of cereal. For some reason, cereal at nighttime tastes better. And that was my typical day. And you wouldn't believe how many hundreds of people emailed me every single day saying, Drew, man, the foods you eat are exactly what I eat, and I can't believe your body's changing so quickly. So the first month I gained like 21, 22 pounds, I believe. And I noticed it, but other people are like, oh, you look like a normal person now.
Yeah, the definition goes away. You're like, wait a minute, is this there's not a six pack here anymore. There's that's just one ab. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing that I was curious is one thing, not to draw too many comparisons to Supersize Me, because I don't think the two are super close, but through that journey, there was medical advice, he was under, whatever. What did you notice about some of your levels, maybe your blood sugar or things like that you could measure throughout the course of this process?
Yeah, so I did have a doctor monitor me, once a month to make sure I wasn't going to die. But I remember, obviously all my blood work was in the red pretty quickly within 2 months of eating these types of highly processed, cheap American foods that they taste really good and they're affordable. I get it. And they're very convenient, right? You just boom, open it up and instant, flavor in your mouth. I get why people eat it. So my lipids, my HDL was really low. My LDL was high. My triglycerides were high. The thing that surprised me as it went on was I developed something called a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I wasn't drinking alcohol at the time, but I would just drink soda. But the damage it does to your liver is as if you were an alcoholic, which is crazy and scary because people don't realize that, especially, growing up in the Mormon culture. It's like, hey, we don't drink alcohol, so we're healthy people.
You don't even drink soda because caffeine's a stimulant, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's kind of, that was kind of like the culture back in the days. It's kind of evolved now to where you're allowed to drink caffeine, but you can have soda. You can have caffeine-free Diet Coke if you want. You can have any kind of soda for the most part nowadays.
The reason I bring it up, my freshman year in college, my buddy Steve, who was actually from Charlottesville, was LDS, and he's like, yeah, I can't have Mountain Dew, but he's out there smoking a cigarette. I thought it was funny, but yeah, I learned a few things about the faith while I was there. But that was one thing that, it's a stimulant, so which is kind of funny. But now, and I remember reading a story that BYU finally allows like Mountain Dew on campus, which is even stranger.
So that's the thing, is the culture's evolved over the years where like, hey, caffeine's not the issue, it's other things. So, but that's what I'm saying is like, I was drinking soda this whole time, like it was water, and the type of damage it does to your body, like so quickly, because if you think about it, I was in shape my entire life, 31 years of my life, eating healthy, exercising, being fit, and then boom, in 6 months time to have all of that reversed. And to like when I let myself go, no exercise and eating these types of foods every single day and being sedentary, man, your health can take such a hit. It doesn't matter how long you've been in shape for. And that's what's crazy. Your body can change that quickly.
Through my own experiences and working through a better diet and getting the blood sugar, and I've already mentioned this on other shows that I've been dealing with type 2 because I really pretty much crushed myself in college with 7 years of a lot of fast food, a lot of Chinellos, a lot of natural light. So my 20s were pretty hard. I'm paying for that in my 30s, but I've noticed when you start eating healthy, you cuts heal faster and things of that nature. You sleep better, your skin, your complexion gets better. What are some things that you noticed that you didn't have to deal with growing up, but it's like, wow, was that a rash, or is that is that I've got dry, itchy skin here? I mean, when did you start noticing some real side effects beyond what the doctors told you?
Sure. Yeah. So probably within the first month, I started snoring, which affected my sleep, which affected my energy levels throughout the day, which affected my mood and my hormones and my personality. So that changed pretty quickly. But then also probably by month 3, this thing called chafing became an issue and that I was not prepared for.
Chub rub.
Yes, exactly. Super uncomfortable, man. And I did this in the middle of summer. So it was really hot out here in Utah. And I would get like sweaty man boob, and I would get chafing, and I was like, "How? Like this is the most uncomfortable thing in my life." And so I looked into it, like, okay, buy some Gold Bond powder, and so I started using that. But then also like little things like bending over and clipping my toenails. Like I would have to hold my breath as I was clipping, and then I would have to come back up for air, take a deep breath, and go back down and clip. All these little things that I took for granted that I had no idea would change physically. These things I was kind of like really surprised by. The only things that I was expecting was, I'll get fat, gain the man boobs and the love handles, but I didn't know how it was going to affect me physically, like walking up the stairs, being out of breath, snoring at night, which affected my energy levels and, all the visceral fat around my organs, making it really hard to breathe. So if I ate a meal and I was super full, it was really hard to breathe after that meal because I was so full, and all the fat around my organs and my lungs made it even more difficult to breathe. And so all these things I took for granted or didn't expect were really eye openers for me, to be honest with you.
So yeah, you as we mentioned earlier, you wrestled 189 in high school. What did you start? What was your start weight for this, and then what did you top out at when you added that 75 pounds on?
Yeah, 193 was my start. 269 was the heaviest I got up to. So 76 pounds at my heaviest is what I gained. And I didn't expect to gain that much. I expected maybe 50 to 60. I kind of overachieved with the amount of weight that I ended up gaining.
Now, here's if you're a personal trainer through all, I mean, were you still working as a personal trainer through all this?
Good question. No, I actually stopped for two reasons. One, I felt I would be tempted to want to work out because I'd be in the gym all the time. And then two, I didn't want the judgment of other people looking at me thinking, why is this trainer overweight? Like, he's trying to teach people how to get in shape and he's not in shape himself. Like, who's going to hire him? So I kind of, for those two reasons, stopped training. Like I said, I had a full-time job in the medical field to pay the bills. So I didn't have to train during this time. But those were the two reasons I decided not.
All this thing comes around and okay, you've stopped, and then day one of, okay, let's burn this off. What is the mindset?
Yeah, there was half excitement to get my body back and like really excited for change and to get this weight off. The other half was nervous, doubting myself, like wondering these fears of, what if I can't do it? What if I'm stuck like this? And might have to change the name of my brand to Fit to Fat and Stuck, or Fit to Fat and Happy now, or whatever it is. I was kind of nervous because I've never been this overweight. I've had to cut weight for wrestling before, but that's like 10 pounds, 20 pounds maybe at the most, but never 76 pounds. And everyone was watching. I went on a bunch of TV shows like Dr. Oz and Jay Leno and Good Morning America, and here I was in the limelight. Like, all right, Drew, you got to lose the weight. Show us how to do it. And, so half of me was really excited. Half of me was really nervous about, I hope this works out.
And what was the hard, once you'd been on that 6-month binge of just deliciously horrible foods for you, what was the hardest thing for you to give up?
For me, it was the soda. And that's what I remember my clients telling me, is that they could give up everything else, but like, man, my Pepsi or my Coke, like I don't know if I can really give that up for the rest of my life. And I'm like, look, it's not that hard. You just willpower your way through it, and you don't buy it anymore. But dude, the thing for me that was eye-opening was how powerful the emotional attachment to food really is. Before, I'm like, look, it's just a willpower thing. It's not, but I didn't realize, how addictive food could be for some people, and how emotionally attached to food we become, whether it's a celebratory thing, like, hey, life's good, let's have a drink, or let's have, pizza for the game. Or if it's like, I'm stressed out, I'm depressed, I'm going to eat this food because it makes me feel better, and I just hate my life, and this brings me temporary comfort. So I'm just going to keep doing that and repeat that vicious cycle. I didn't realize that, psychologically, that how powerful the emotional attachment to food really is. And so for me, even though I did this for 6 months, I still had those withdrawal symptoms of wanting that food, the Cinnamon Toast Crunch or the Mountain Dew or whatever it was, the pizza. I wanted that so bad. So the first 2 weeks of transitioning into this new healthy lifestyle literally sucked. Like, I felt so awful. I had headaches. I was grumpy. I was moody. I had lack of energy. I was always starving. And here I was, a proponent of health as a trainer, eating healthy foods like spinach and kale and broccoli and lean chicken breast. And yet I was feeling awful. And it finally clicked, for me. I'm like, this is what my clients have been telling me. This is why it's been so difficult for them to embrace this lifestyle change. And I get why they mess up. And so it really helps me to develop empathy, more respect, and a better understanding of what people go through.
One thing you've really been high on recently, if you've got the book, you've got the television deals, you got working with A&E. We'll talk about getting into the television side of it here in a bit, but a lot of it is the keto diet, and that's kind of something that's been flashy. It's been a bit of a buzzword. I know Joe Rogan talks about how he likes being on it on his popular podcast, but and I've drawn some elements of Whole30 with how I'm eating, cutting out a lot of carbs, and it's similar in some respects. But what is it about that particular diet that you think is kind of a key to triggering the fat burning and getting people away from those cravings where they're those emotional eaters?
Yeah, so first of all, with keto, I'm a huge fan of the keto diet for a lot of reasons, but there is a fad aspect of it. When people call it a diet, it's, oh, people focus on fat loss and weight loss, and yes, that can be a byproduct of cutting out the carbohydrates and eating high fat, moderate protein, low carb type of diet. And people do experience that. That's why it's so popular, is people do get results on it, just like Atkins did back in the day. With cutting out carbohydrates, you will lose weight most likely for most people. And so, the whole science of what happens when you switch over to a keto diet of eliminating the carbohydrates, forcing your body to produce ketones as an alternative energy source for your brain, your muscles, your organs, so you can function. You're running off a different fuel source, and most people feel amazing because their brain is a lot sharper. There's a lot more mental clarity, improvement in cognitive function. So for me, that's why I fell in love with the diet. I think that's why a lot of people like it as well, is because they don't feel as hungry as much. They don't have to eat 6-7 times a day. They can eat once or twice or maybe 3 times a day, but they're not as starving. They're not hangry. They don't feel those symptoms of like, I need to eat 6-7 times a day. And I think that's why it's so popular. But on top of that, there's also these therapeutic applications, like scientific research that's being done to help with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or PTSD or traumatic brain injury, or even certain forms of cancer. It's amazing the amount of scientific research that's being done on the ketogenic diet. And I think that's why it's kind of becoming really popular. But also there's the fat aspect of people wanting to lose weight and lose fat. And I think what it does is on keto, the food tastes really good. You're adding in all these fats that you've been told were bad for you: butter, coconut oil, the steak, fattier cuts of meat like bacon, whole eggs, like eating the yolk. These foods that were like, oh, don't eat that. If you eat fat, you'll get fat. So the food tastes amazing. You're adding in high fat foods with lots of salt, which is very essential on the keto diet as well, which we can get into later. But you're adding in these high fat foods and the salt. And so the food tastes good. It doesn't taste like you're on a diet. And I think that's why people love it and helps them, get rid of the cravings because they're actually eating foods that feel like rewards to them.
Yeah. Again, let's bring a personal experience here. When I cut out a lot of one, diet soda, because I think diet soda is a crutch for a lot of people. It's like, well, it's not full sugar. I know that some people when you're a diabetic, your body will treat it sometimes like it is, and your blood sugar is still going to go up even though there's no actual sugar in it. So I found it getting out sugar, getting rid of fake sweeteners, and then basically sticking with a lot of teas. Again, unsweetened teas, sweetening it with lemon or lime, and a lot of water. I try to drink a gallon of water a day if I'm lucky. But I work at this desk. I sit down on my ass all day, and I need to get up. I got the Apple Watch saying, "Hey, it's time to move." It doesn't really help, and I got 2 kids I got to chase around. So sometimes, again, I can see where the lifestyle is. And one thing that always bothered me about the convenience factor of food is I like eating. My wife and I, we do our menu planning. We got lean meats. We had a fridge full. We buy a quarter cow, so we got good grass-fed lean meat from northern Minnesota. We get we go with the chicken breasts and things like that, and mix it up with some fish here and there. But the fast food thing, this is where I totally got my 75 pounds, and I think it was probably I gained 60 pounds my first semester in college.
Wow.
Wrestled 215, came back home at like 275. It was bad. And it was like the freshman 15 per limit. It's fast food. It's convenience. It's cheapness. Did you see that McDonald's is now launching like a 48-piece nugget in a bucket style? Are you kidding me? How are these things for sale, man?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, the stuff that we have. That's the problem, is our society makes it an uphill battle for the rest of us that are struggling, because that food is convenient. It tastes good. It's for the most part affordable. And so people are like, yeah, why would I spend money on salad or organic food when I can get this 48-piece meal for X amount of dollars, and boom, that feeds me for this many days and I'm saving money. But your health, one day you'll see it's you got to start investing in your health.
I will also admit to probably the most shameful thing I've ever done in terms of eating did involve McDonald's. It was when back in high school they had the 2 for $2 6-piece nuggets, and I went and I took down 60 just to see if I could do it. And people still talk about that. And that was you hold your head in shame. You're like, I just ate 60 chicken nuggets in a sitting.
Oh,
yeah. I still feel like gross thinking about that. But moving forward and getting back to the weight loss, and then when did you see the switch flip that, like, okay, you're getting back to weight? Well, one, how long did it take you to get the 75 pounds back off?
Mm-hmm. So it was a 6-month journey back to fit.
Okay, 6 months.
Yeah, so basically what I did in that nutshell was the first 30 days, like I said, the first 2 weeks were a struggle. Those were really hard for me, but eventually the cravings became more manageable. The first month, I didn't exercise at all. I just wanted to focus on nutrition because I think that's the piece that people are missing is they think, oh, if I just do P90X twice a day and I do CrossFit, every single day, I'll just get ripped and shredded. But the diet is really where you'll see the most results. If you stay consistent with your nutrition, that's where people see the biggest change, to be honest with you. So for me, I skipped exercise. And plus, I didn't want to go back and start doing these workouts that I knew I was like, man, mentally, my mind thinks I'm in shape, but physically, my body is not there. So I don't want to get injured, which some people tend to do as well. So,
like the used to codes, like that's what the ex-athlete feels like they can do after not being in a gym for 10 years.
exactly. So I started out slow, just focus on nutrition, which is the hardest part for people to stay consistent with, anyways. And then after those 30 days, I started going back into the gym with body weight exercises, kind of lower intensity at first. And then throughout the course of the next 5 months, I upped the intensity, switched up my diet a little bit, to really get back to where I was. So it took me 6 months of losing the weight to get back to fit. So on the outside, I looked the same. But inside, I was a changed man. I realized how much of this journey was mental and emotional. And I realized how wrong I was as a personal trainer before trying to help people. And had I not gone through this journey, I wouldn't have learned those lessons on the mental and emotional side of transformation that have truly shaped my brand and who I am today and how I perceive helping people. That's kind of where the biggest lessons were learned on the mental and emotional side.
Do you feel the fact that the obesity epidemic in this country is a big reason why Dr. Oz and A&E are so interested in this journey?
I think so, 100%. Because I think what happened from this journey was it gave me empathy, and I see this disconnect in the fitness industry. You see all these people over here that are fitness models that look great, and they've been in shape their whole life for the most part. And then they look at people who are overweight and they think, oh, you're just lazy. Like, it's super simple. You just follow my plan and you look like this. Like, what's wrong with you? You just got to dig deep and willpower your way through these changes. And there's a lot of judgment on both sides. And so I see this disconnect and there's this big gap in the fitness industry. And I feel like what Fit2Fat2Fit does and can do is help to bridge that gap by bringing empathy to the health and fitness industry. Because I love this quote. It says, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you're a trainer, a coach, a leader of some type, you could have all the knowledge in the world of knowing how to change someone's body scientifically and biologically. Like, you understand all that. That's cool. Like, that is definitely beneficial and helpful. But unless you learn how to connect with someone and relate to them and they can relate to you and they trust you and they know that you care about them, they're probably not going to listen to you. And so that's where I think it's one thing that's missing is you can't learn that from a training manual of becoming certified as a trainer. And I think that's what Fit2Fat2Fit kind of did for me. And that's why, I've been able to go on these TV shows and then even create my own TV show where instead of me doing this, I'm bringing on other trainers from across the country to go through this process so that they can be more empathetic and have more respect and better understanding so that their clients are more motivated and willing to listen to them after they see their trainer kind of go through a little bit of suffering and go through these hard times, even though they're temporary, they're for a short period of time. It's not exactly the same. But if they can just feel more understood, I think they're going to be more willing to listen and more willing to push themselves.
Like a lot of Americans, I was at one point addicted to watching The Biggest Loser on NBC. Matter of fact, Rulon Gardner was on that show. Matt Hoover was a wrestler at Iowa. He won one of those early seasons. And do you think shows like that have kind of put a different stigma on people that are trying to lose weight? Like, oh yeah, I can do it. And if I just go on this TV show, I can do it. Or if I just work out 19 hours a day, I can do it. I mean, from your perspective, combining the exercise, combining your specific diet of choice, and different folks for different strokes, some people's bodies work differently on one plan than the other. But what do you think the most basic mindset is for, now that you've got this empathy, for people that are overweight and significantly overweight to get back down to a manageable weight and feel good about themselves waking up?
That's a great question. And, I've had to think about this over the years, and my answer has evolved over the years. And I think what it comes down to is first changing our perception of what health and fitness is. We see these TV shows, which are great. They motivate people. Seeing someone transform their body will always be inspiring. But I think what it does is it creates this perception of what health and fitness is supposed to be. And it tells people, hey, you have to look like this in order to be successful and to be healthy. And if you don't look like this, then you're worthless and you're not successful. And I think that's what's hard for people is they think, okay, well, if I lose weight and I get skinny and I have a six pack, then that's what I'm supposed to look like. I'm supposed to look like these people on TV or on Instagram. And if I don't look like that, then I'm not healthy. And so our perception has been, changed over the years and skewed of thinking like it's either this or nothing. And if you're not that perfect body, then that brings your value down. Our society places so much value and importance on what does your physical appearance look like. And if you are overweight, then you are this type of person. And I think that's where we set people up to fail. And so if we can change people's perception of health and fitness and helping them focus on the process and not the results so much, the results, let the results be a byproduct of living that healthy lifestyle over time. Like, just live the lifestyle, have healthy habits, develop those healthy habits. Don't worry so much about what your body fat percentage is and how much weight you need to lose, because that's what people start defining themselves by those measurements and think I'm a success if I can get to this number on the scale, or if I can get to this body fat percentage. I think people have so much more to offer this world than what their bodies look like. No one's going to care if on their tombstone it doesn't say, "Hey, this guy had a great six pack his whole life." There's so much more to you than just your physical body. So our perception of health and fitness, I think, needs to change and help people realize that you have more value than just your relationship with gravity, which is what the scale represents. So don't focus so much on the results, focus on the process, developing those healthy habits, and let the results kind of take care of themselves. And so I think that's where it needs to change, and is our perception of what health and fitness needs to be, and realizing that you're healthy, your version of healthy looks different than my version of healthy, and that's okay.
Yeah, nobody's going, here lies Herb, had a great beer gut. Now, the thing is, you don't want to be joking about the tombstone joke at 55. You'd rather do it at 85. So that's also part of getting healthy. Spinning things back to the website, Fit2Fat2Fit.com. You've got all sorts of resources. You've got products for sale. You've got links to your book, talking about your podcast as well, personal success stories. And when it comes time to launch this brand, and what really was, do you think, the watershed moment of like, okay, this guy Drew Manning, Fit2Fat2Fit, is more than just some small town guy in Utah doing something weird? When did you first notice this? Okay, this is blowing up.
Yeah, it was during my Fit to Fat journey. I had kind of like done my own thing as far as reaching out to radio shows here in Utah and reaching out to fitness bloggers to see if they were interested in interviewing me. And then one time, we struck a chord with this one fitness blogger who posted it, and she got picked up by Yahoo Shine, which was a subsidiary of Yahoo.com, and that was posted on there, and it got a lot of good traffic. And so Yahoo noticed it and said, "Hey, we want to put this up on the front page of Yahoo.com." And then that's where everything changed. It showed up on Yahoo.com right there on the front page, front and center, next to like Ashton Kutcher and Jennifer Aniston, and then there's me. And my website crashed. People were calling me, like even from high school, like, "Oh my gosh, dude, I just saw you on Yahoo. Like, this is crazy what you're doing." And every TV show called me, or somehow got my parents' number and called them and said, "Hey, we want to have Drew on the show." And I had to go through this weird phase, or this weird thing of like, TV shows were competing to have me on. They're like, "Hey, you can't go on that show. You got to choose between our show or their show. Our show is better." And I'm like, "Why can't I just go on all of them?" They're like, "If you go on that show, we won't have you on our show." And so it was really weird, man. And then from there, I went on all these TV shows, and it kind of blew up. And then after about a month of that, I had to make a decision of like, okay, do I follow this path, or do I stick with my safe, comfortable job in the medical field where I get paid a good salary and actually enjoy it? I had to make that decision, and I kind of rolled the dice and decided to go the entrepreneur route and do this myself. And so I did. And then from there, it's been 7 years since I've done it, but there's been ups and downs where I'm like, okay, maybe I might have to go back and get another job. It wasn't until about 2 years ago that I met my business partner, Los Silva. He's a good friend of mine too. And we've since then, that's totally changed. That's where my business has taken to the next level of what we're able to do today, and the massive amounts of people that we're able to reach. Like my keto program that you mentioned, which is a 60-day keto program, has been downloaded by over 200,000 people and continue to grow every single day. And so keto is super popular, and I've been blessed and fortunate to have this platform to, be an influencer. Like you mentioned, it wasn't my intention in the beginning But here I am. I've kind of fallen into this, and it's very fulfilling when people email me and say how my program has transformed their life and their family's life, and that will always be fulfilling to me. And I think it's important to remember that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So for me, that's what keeps me grounded is, okay, what brings me fulfillment in what I do in my job? Because people think, oh, if I make this much money and have this kind of house and this kind of car, then I'm going to be happy. When in reality, that's not true. Like, that doesn't bring happiness. That doesn't guarantee happiness. Same thing with losing weight. Just because you lose weight and have a six pack does not, guarantee happiness. I know so many people that look fantastic on the outside, but they're miserable on the inside. They hate who they are. So find what brings you fulfillment as you're working on a better version of yourself. As you're, trying to chase that, quote unquote success. But I think that's kind of what helps keep me grounded is being grateful every single day of finding things that bring that fulfillment.
How has the kind of the success and the fame that comes along with it affected you in terms of clients that you get now with personal training? I mean, your schedule's got to be filling up.
Well, that's the thing is I actually stopped training clients one-on-one because of this. There's only so many hours in a day, and with training clients, you can't. There's only a max number of people you can impact, and that's why I went totally digital with my content. Was my goal is to influence the masses, as many people as possible. And as a one-on-one trainer, I couldn't do that. I could only work maybe if each client and each session is an hour long. There's 8 to 12 hours a day of working. You can only X amount of people per day per month, and so I couldn't make the impact that I'm doing today if I was training clients one-on-one. So I kind of chose the path of impacting the masses.
One thing you've done to also impact the masses beyond just the website is you've jumped on the podcast train, and I was looking it up, and believe it or not, you are one day past as we record this on September 12th, 2018. You started your show 3 years ago yesterday, and you also released, I checked out the most recent episode, episode 160 with, Ben Hardy talking about his book, Willpower Doesn't Work, and that kind of ties everything together in terms of what you're talking about, willpower, but the podcast train. I mean, how much have you seen podcasting really influence your reach beyond, an Instagram picture? It's long form content, something like we're doing now that has had, changed other people's lives by picking up your show.
Yeah, I think this is really the podcast game has totally changed everything for everyone, because you can have instant access to any kind of knowledge you want to know. Like, if you're interested in wrestling, there's podcasts for wrestling. If you're interested in Game of Thrones, there's a podcast for that.
You're speaking my language on both of those things. You know that, right?
2 for 2. If you want to know about the keto diet, am I 3 for 3 there?
I've not gone keto. I've kind of basically how I'm eating is, like I said, most of my eating is Whole30-ish.
Gotcha.
Because I do like craft beer, so that's my cheat.
Well, Melissa Hartwig is a good friend of mine. She lives here in Utah. We talk all the time, and so I'll let her know that you gave her a shout out. And so, anyways, what I'm saying is, the podcast game has changed everything, because you can have any kind of information at the tip of your fingertips, and I think that's amazing, and it's changed so many people's lives. They can listen to this on their way to work and download this type of information, and boom, their mindset is transformed. And so for me, what it's done for me personally is it's opened up the doors to interviewing people that I never would have had access to had I not had a podcast. And I think that goes for everyone else as well. Like, people are totally fine with doing a podcast interview, but if they're like, hey, can I have an hour of your time to go get coffee? It's like, nah, sorry, man, I'm too busy. Oh, you have a podcast? Yeah, let's do that. You know what I'm saying? It's just, I kind of do it for me selfishly. The podcast, I know people are out there listening to it, but I do it for me because, I learned so much from so many other people. I've talked to some amazing people, like you mentioned, Benjamin Hardy, Willpower Doesn't Work, totally changed my perception of how change happens in people. And I get to talk to doctors and nutritionists and all these amazing people that have transformed my life. And I know people listening is transforming their lives as well.
Yeah, we got our degree of podcast nerds that listen to this show, and I have some friends that do weight loss podcasts. I have friends that do wrestling podcasts. I have friends that do Game of Thrones podcasts. So again, we've got all the you're the first guy I know that does a keto podcast. So we've got those 3 check boxes taken care of. But when you look at the style of speaking, the manner of speaking, in terms of how you can build a rapport with somebody like you've never actually physically met and bring them on for an hour conversation, hour and a half conversation, How much do you think that helps your brand as a whole?
I think it helps out in so many ways because my brand is not just one dimensional. There's so many platforms that I try and get my message out. And I think this is just another platform to get my message out to people that might not be on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And so, like I said, my goal is to impact the masses. And in order to do that, you can't just be good at one platform. You can't just do Twitter or you can't just do Instagram. Yes, you can reach like a lot of people on that one platform, but you got to be diverse and realize that people are downloading information in different ways on different platforms. And so this is just another way to get my message out there. And that's kind of how we're changing the world. Like, honestly, like this is a way to change the world. And because 50 years ago, I mean, we had the newspaper and radio and maybe TV, right? That's how we changed the world. But now it's like, man, like your reach goes all the way across. Like this podcast will be available for anyone in any country for the most part to download and listen to, So it's amazing.
Over 160 episodes. What do you remember about show 1 and compare it to show 160?
Oh man, it's come a long ways. When I first did this, first of all, I have to give a shout out to Sean Stevenson, who is the host of the Model Health Show, and his podcast is always top 1 or at least in the top 5 of health and fitness on iTunes. And he convinced me to do a podcast. And of course, I'm like, man, who am I? Like, I have nothing. Like, I don't have nothing new to say, or there's plenty of podcasts out there. I don't need to do that. But that's one thing I want people to realize is that there's, even if you're in a saturated industry, no one is you, right? No one is you. And that's important to remember. You will have something to say and people will resonate with you, even though there's 100 other people that are saying the same thing as you. Your vibe helps you find your tribe. And that's what I tell people all the time. And so for me, from podcast 1 to where we are today, it's just amazing to see how far it's come. And then obviously, hopefully my speaking skills have gotten better. I don't really know. I'd have to ask people, hey, how do I sound back then versus today? I'd like to know. Maybe that would be a good poll question.
In case you're wondering, as the time we check this right now, Sean Stevenson's podcast ranked number 10 in the health and nutrition subcategory of health. So right around there with, there's some keto stuff. There's Jillian Michaels. There's, the usual suspects.
Yeah, it fluctuates, like the top guys up there are always competing with each other. One week, one of them has a great episode and boom, they're number 1. They'll post a picture about that. And then the next week they're down to 10. And then, it gets a circle of life. It's not the circle of spinning pinwheel of doom like you get on the Max. Now, I'm going to keep it podcasting here for a minute. I know you use Libsyn. I use Libsyn for a ton of my shows. About the tech, how daunting was the technical side of saying, okay, episode 1 to now 160, you've obviously got it down pat. Yeah. So honestly, I kind of went the route of outsourcing a lot of it because I like I said, my business is not one dimensional. So if I only had the podcast, I probably would have done a lot more work, but I just hired a company to edit it, upload it for me, and make sure it sounded good, it looked good. But I can only imagine the amount of work that goes into doing all that yourself, and I just didn't have the time to do that. So I've actually stuck with the same company, Podfly. I definitely highly recommend them. They make it super simple, super easy to get it up there. And so for me, it's just I can just focus on the interview. And then after that, it's out of my hands. And so I've kind of stuck with them.
Yeah, I've seen them at a couple podcasts. Actually, the one podcast conference I've been to, they were there at NMX. I still haven't hit Podcast Movement or anything up like that. But spinning things back now to Drew Manning, and I'm curious on how much of to dial this back into the wrestling culture, how much of your wrestling experience do you pull from each and every day, whether it be with recording a podcast or your former life, personally training individuals and now going on these shows? How much do you credit wrestling to all the success?
I think that's a big part of my success, to be honest with you, because it taught me to be brave in moments where, even though on the inside I was scared, I had to show up. And so, you know what it's like. I mean, going out there on the wrestling mat, all eyes are on you and it's up to you. And inside you're nervous, you got the butterflies. I was a scared kid and very low confidence. Even though I was excelled at sports and got good, I still had low confidence in myself. So what it did for me is in moments later on in my life when I had that kind of negative self-talk and that low confidence, I was able to go out on stage and I thought I did really well, even though on the inside I was like super nervous. I remember one specific experience of going on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. That was the first TV appearance that I ever did.
Wait, your first one ever was Leno. That's, dude, you can't.
Yeah.
That's like, sorry, that's it. I'm done. You could have just checked out there. Yeah, I was on Tonight Show.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is like that fear, like nervousness would have, like if you go back and watch that interview, I didn't feel like I was nervous. I didn't feel like I was like, getting embarrassed or like forgetting what I was supposed to say at certain moments. Like I just went out there and had fun, but up until that moment, and similar with football, like once the first whistle, and you just go, you're kind of in the zone. I think football and wrestling both did that for me of, okay, once you're in the zone, you're in the moment, boom, that's when you perform. And I felt like I did really good with no training, no PR team, no publicist to teach me, like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you're supposed to say. It was just me out there by myself, just winging it. And I've had so many moments in my life where I'm like, I'm not, like, I shouldn't be here. Like, I'm not this perfect expert that knows it all. Like, this should be someone that's like, this type of person. And that negative self-talk that still goes through my mind. I think wrestling has given me that courage and that bravery to do hard things that I never would have believed that I could have done. And so, I definitely owe that to wrestling, and especially the discipline factor. Wrestling is just, like I said, one of the hardest sports, but you learn so much from hard things in your life. And so I'm grateful for those moments. And I don't miss, wearing 3 layers of sweats, cutting weight, but going out there and getting my hand raised at the end of the match was definitely worth it after all that hard work. So I think it's a great sport, and still have a lot of love for it.
Yeah, gonna go back. Still throwing back some old memories here. Who was when growing up in Northern Virginia and wrestling there? Who was the one guy you loved to wrestle, and who was the one guy you hated wrestling?
That's a good question. Could it be the same person?
It absolutely could be the same person.
Now that I'm older and wiser, it was from Oakton. You just mentioned his name, Mark Kimmener. Yeah, because we kind of we were kind of rivals in football as well, because he played linebacker, I played linebacker. I got all the awards in football, for district, region, state as an inside linebacker, and then we would see each other on the mat. And I remember as a junior, he beat up on me in wrestling and kind of got his revenge, and so that was kind of my arch nemesis at the time, where I'm like, okay, I have to beat this type of guy. And I remember a really powerful experience. I think this was my senior year in districts. He wasn't in my district. He was in my region. I lost it in districts. I didn't win my district. And I lost to a guy that I'd beaten 3 times that year. And I was so mad and upset at myself. And, I was down on myself as well. And then come region, I totally changed my mindset. And I ended up beating Mark in the finals and winning region that year. And then I beat him again in state for 3rd place. And so, that was one of the things where the bar was set at a certain level when he kicked my butt pretty good, and just knowing that I could do hard things again. Like I could, beat that guy, even though I've lost to him before. And so I'd probably say him, to be honest with you. I hated wrestling people who smelled bad. That was I don't remember any names, but like that's you're so close to that person, like with their breath or their BO. Like, yeah, that's the only downside too. So I can't think of anyone's name though that smelled bad.
Yeah, I'm sitting there. I'm trying to dig through the old Mad Talk Online archives, trying to figure out what district it was and who you might have wrestled. Who did you wrestle in those districts?
He was from Thomas Jefferson, which was the smart school. The gifted school.
Yeah, was it Thomas Jefferson Science and Technology or something like that?
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So, we kind of poked fun at them for being nerds, but I mean, they're kind of like the Stanford of high school teams, right? So, anyways, I can't remember his name, but he beat me in district finals, and I was supposed to win and all these things, and I gone to regionals and luckily got 1st place.
So it was Jefferson. See, I'm going to solve this mystery right now, because Jefferson. So that would be, let's see, I found a name. Let's see if I can get a first name on it.
189.
Yeah, it was DiMartino.
Yes, man, you're good at this.
I had all this stuff. You beat him in the Conti quarters at States.
Even his coach, exactly. And even his coach came up to me. He's like, "Man, you beat my guy 3 times this year, man. Like, how did you lose to him?" And I'm like, "I have no idea, man. I have no idea how I lost to him. It was just one of those things where mentally I was like looking forward to like regionals and didn't expect this to happen. And yeah, I was really mad at myself, but luckily it had a good ending for me.
Who is the best wrestler you remember watching in high school?
I think the last name is Eastman.
Fairfax High, John Eastman.
Yes,
yeah.
Fairfax High,
Bad dude, 98 state champ for Fairfax.
Yeah, he was great, man. And I actually got to train with him that summer after my senior year because he picked my good friend John Stark to train with him because he was one of the toughest matches where he couldn't do anything against him. He won all his matches against him, but it was always like 2-0 or 3-1. You know, it was always a close match. It was never, you know, domination like he usually was used to. So we got to train with him and to help him prepare for nationals. So that was a really cool experience.
Yeah, Eastman won States 160 that 98 year. Actually, it was like the one I was announcing the AA regional that same weekend, so I wasn't actually at the AAAs that weekend. But I remember getting a call, and it was a call because I worked with Frank Lapoli, and we founded the Virginia Challenge, and it was his son Derek that Eastman pinned in the finals. And you know, Derek was a lot like Walker in terms of he liked to play the villain. So like the local people were like so stoked, like Eastman pinned Lapoli. It was just I remember sitting in Anna's Pizza getting that phone call. That was crazy. Yeah. But Drew, in the time we got left, Fit2Fat2Fit.com is the website. Lay it on us. What's the pitch? What do you got if people are interested in changing their look or learning more about what you do?
Yeah, man, it's super simple. All of my stuff is branded Fit #2 Fat It's my website, my book, my podcast, all my social media handles. Just kind of follow me on social media. I'll kind of keep you posted with a lot of things coming up. I have book #2 finally coming out, but it'll come out February 2019. A lot of other big announcements. You know, I've started a couple other businesses this past year. So there's a lot of big things coming that I'm really excited about. So just follow me at Fit2Fat2Fit to kind of stay in the know.
Yeah, what do we got to get you back into the wrestling community? How do we do that?
Dude, I would love that. To be honest with you, I don't know. I'm out here in Utah, which they have a good a wrestling culture out here as well. I think I just need a connection with a coach to kind of just invite me, you know, come talk to the kids, come roll around a little bit. It's been so long, but I think I still got it, man. Mentally, I think I still got it. I could last maybe one period. But
dude, it's those used to codes. Be careful of those.
Exactly.
Again, Drew Manning at Fit2Fat2Fit.com, the Fit2Fat2Fit experience on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, you name it, wherever good podcasts are found. Drew, great conversation, man. Really, really liked having the opportunity to talk to you, you know, almost 20 years after I last saw you wrestle.
Exactly, man. This is probably the funnest interview I've ever done. So thanks for having me on.
So, yeah, got a little Virginia tie there with Drew Manning, Fit2Fat2Fit. I never want to try something like that, although I kind of explained that I have kind of done that, but I didn't do it on purpose. Anyway, this is the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. I'd like to thank you folks from the health world who might have been checking out the show because you know Drew. Thanks for listening to shows about all sorts of levels of wrestling, whether it be the Olympics, college, high-level high school, all sorts of random stuff, people that have wrestling backgrounds like you just heard with Drew Manning. My name is Jason Bryant, just fresh off my trip from Trnava, Slovakia, and fresh off a not safe for work appearance on the Blood Round Wrestling Podcast at bloodround.com. Also had a much more safer for work experience with my new friends over at Olympic Fever at olympfever.com. Let's talk a little bit about wrestling there. I'll be on that show several times leading in to the Tokyo Games talking about wrestling, my experiences as a PA announcer, etc. So I was in Slovakia at the Junior World Championships. Makai Lewis, Junior World Champion for Team USA and Virginia Tech, had an episode of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling that's on the network here at MadTalkOnline.com. Check that interview out. Talk with him, Jared Freyer. And throughout the course of the interview, I made no references to Old Dominion defeating Virginia Tech in football. Biggest win in school history for the young 10-year football program. You don't come to this show to listen to football talk. But that night in Trnava, I was pretty much just I was running all over the place, just super happy. So ye old alma mater with I was getting texts and tweets from everyone, and I do a really, really good job at maintaining my impartiality on when it comes to wrestling. But when I don't cover football, so I am a Monarch super fan. So yeah, that's how it is. I'm also a Monarch super fan in every other sport, but I cannot show it in wrestling because, well, you know, I work in wrestling. It's just that little line you don't cross as a professional. Now, what's upcoming here? Well, I'm going to kind of slow a few of these short times down. I got a lot of stuff between now and the 20-something days I leave to go to Budapest. Yes, I'm not saying it wrong. It is Budapest. If you look it up, it may not look spelled that way, but yes, there is. It's like Hesh from C-Lab 2021, and very underrated show on Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. Anyway, I'll be there doing the PA, so I've got to go through and get these 7 to early entry numbers are like, this is preliminary. This is what I got from United World Wrestling today. Greco with 260, freestyle with 248, and women with 190. So if I do some quick math, and let's see, carry the 1, let's see, that's like 600 and something, 618 athletes as of now that I have to look up, research, get their pronunciations, get their ages and stuff. And a lot of this stuff I have from last year, but the names don't always stay the same. So my research begins. It is now going to be a 3-week sprint to get all the information for the World Championships and these athletes, their pronunciations right, because I'm serving as the PA announcer in Budapest for the 2018 United World Wrestling Senior World Championships. Looking forward to that. Budapest is a great town, great city, great people. Castles, freaking castles, man. Who doesn't love a castle? Unless you're playing me in chess or checkers, in which case it's king me in checkers. It's the rook in chess. I suck at both. I never really was a chess player, so I know the game. I just know that I suck at the game. What does that have to do with wrestling? No, nothing. Other things that we're working here on Mad Talk Online. Each day, the daily wrestling newsletter is still going strong. Even while I was overseas, each day you got the daily wrestling newsletter. Even when I was on a plane, taking care of the newsletter. MadTalkOnline.com/news. Daily wrestling news delivered to your inbox. If you're in the Eastern time zone, it's 7. And if you're Central, it's 6, 5, and 4. That's what time that email comes in every single day to give you the best of the web in wrestling from around the world. Not just, it'll save you some time. It'll still take you to Track Wrestling. It'll take you to Flow Wrestling. It'll take you to Mat.com. It'll take you to Intermat. It'll take you to the Open Mat. It'll find those stuff. It'll save you the time and going, okay, click here, click here, click here, click here. I'm sending you directly to them. Plus, I'm sending you to newspaper stories, podcast links, and things from around the world. This is a time saver. It's going to condense your morning routine of trolling through wrestling websites. That way you can spend more time on Twitter and the message boards. Wait a minute, what is this? Message boards circa 2005? It's all ball bearings and Twitter nowadays. Actually, it's more Instaface or Snapgram or whatever. Anyway, that's going to help you. MadTalkOnline.com/news. I have some good news, too, for those of you who are patrons of this program, and that means people who throw some change into the tip jar at MadTalkOnline.com/join the team or Patreon.com/MadTalkOnline. The shirts, I've gotten the delivery confirmation. They will be here from Compound. So they're going to be post-World Championships. I'm not going to try to mail all these shirts, the new Matt Talk shirts, out to our patrons before the World Championships. It's going to happen. Start of the wrestling season, I'll make sure you get your shirts, your draft glasses, your stickers, and whatnot for being a patron of the program before college wrestling season really gets rolling. So hopefully I'll do that once I return from Budapest. And according to this, Budapest, I return. It's annoying you that I'm saying it that way, isn't it? I know it is. I get back on the 24th. Well, that's the wrong trip. I get back on the 29th of November. So we're looking at that first week or two in November. I'll get the shirts out that hopefully we can get done. Maybe I'll get a wild hair and I'll get all this stuff done, these 600 names done. I'm also still entering the 400-plus college wrestling schedules that you can find at almanac.madtalkonline.com, the most comprehensive wrestling schedule in the world when it comes to U.S. college wrestling. That would make sense because they don't wrestle college wrestling outside of the U.S. with the exception of, Burnaby, British Columbia, where Simon Fraser is in Division II and on the women's side. Almanac.madtalkonline.com. That is where you're finding the schedules, and I'm adding those as we go. I've got about 30-some Division I schools entered. I've still got the rest of them to go. I got a slew of NAIA schools already in there, but that is the situation. So if you like the newsletter, if you like the free scheduling component and free results, and if you also like these free podcasts, I would urge you to consider contributing to the Matt Talk Podcast Network at patreon.com/MattTalkOnline or MattTalkOnline.com/join the team. That is my elongated sales pitch for this episode. Again, as always, I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me because you've always got time for short time. The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to mattalkonline.com/getshorttime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or listen on your favorite podcatcher at mattalkonline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to mattalkonline.com.